James Bond has a lot of secrets.
We all have our secrets. You just didn't get to yours yet.
Well, we're going to get to your biggest secrets right now, Mr. Bond. Hello everyone, it's Sean O'Connell, the managing editor here at CinemaBlend, with a breakdown video about the shocking ending of the latest James Bond film, No Time to Die. It's been out in theaters internationally, it's coming to the States very soon, and we figured now is a good time as any to analyze what happens in the finale of Daniel Craig's run as 007. Goes without saying that we're going to have to get into massive, massive spoilers, so if you haven't seen No Time to Die yet, click away, go see the movie when it opens, come on back and watch my analysis of it. If you don't mind spoilers and you just want to find out how Daniel Craig's era as James Bond concludes, then feel free to go on ahead. But anyone watching this video right now should go down and hit subscribe, and also turn on your notifications, because we're putting a ton of videos on our YouTube channel all the time, and we want to make sure that you guys get to see every single one of them.
You're late.
When you're ready. Salute.
Okay, let's start off by talking about what happens. And seriously, this is your last time to bow out before spoilers start. So, James Bond is on the island lair of his new nemesis in this one, played by Rami Malek. And James has been shot and wounded badly, but he's able to take care of Rami Malek, and he needs to get to the top of the island tower headquarters in order to open up the blast shields that are protecting this base, because he has ordered the government to fire missiles on the base and wipe it out completely, because there is a nanobot situation that Rami Malek's character is about to unleash on the world, and the only way to get rid of it is to eradicate it completely. It's one of those situations where one of the people have to stay behind in order to keep the shields down, and Bond was initially trying to get to a point where he was going to be able to open the shields and get off the island, but time basically runs out on him, and he realizes he has to stay there and sacrifice himself and keep those blast shields open, which means that for the first time on screen in the history of the character, James Bond dies. One other major thing that happens over the course of this finale, though, is before he dies, he has one last conversation with Madeline, played by Léa Seydoux, who we met back in Spectre, the potential love of James's life. But James has one last conversation with Madeline, and she confirms that the child that we meet over the course of No Time to Die, even though she's denied it up to this point, is indeed James Bond's child, a daughter, which makes James Bond a father, again, for the first time in history. So some really significant things that happened for James in the last 30 minutes of No Time to Die. So I want to break down why all of this kind of matters in our next section.
When her secret finds its way out, it'll be the death of you.
You can imagine why I've come back to play.
I kind of alluded to this in the previous section, but these are historic and truly significant decisions that are being made for James Bond as a character, and bringing him up to a little bit more modern, sort of contemporary viewpoint that we've never seen the spy operate on before. Obviously going all the way back to Sean Connery and through Roger Moore and into the Pierce Brosnan films, and the one-offs, the Timothy Daltons that stepped into the role, we've never really seen a human Bond. And by human, I mean like someone who is able to express their emotions and to tear down some of the walls that allowed them to be the sort of gun for hire that 007 is. This matters because it allowed Daniel Craig to actually give a performance as Bond. And I don't mean that as a slight against any of the other actors who played James Bond before, but something about Bond means that he has to stay somewhat cold and aloof and detached, which allows him to be as good as his job as he is. But the evolution of James Bond in the Daniel Craig films really meant that they were able to try two very historic things by admitting that Bond was a father and almost giving him some emotional scenes to play with the daughter, Mathilde, because part of the reason why James sacrifices himself is simply because he realizes once he's been infected with that nanobot technology, he'll never be able to interact with or get close to Madeline or Mathilde ever again. And so he has to basically sacrifice himself because he cannot allow himself to be with his loved ones. And that's just not an aspect of James Bond that we would expect to see. I think it's also important, and one of the reasons why this matters so much is because they killed off Bond. It brings me back to a conversation I had with Tom Cruise, not to name drop, but that was a significant name drop, on the red carpet for the latest Mission Impossible film. And I asked him if he ever wanted to get a chance to do an on-screen death for Ethan Hunt. And literally, Cruise looked at me like I had three heads. Like, he could not wrap his brain around the concept of allowing Ethan Hunt to die in a Mission Impossible movie. And I understand that. You know, I do get that Ethan is one of these characters that always has to sort of triumph in the end and figure out some way to overcome these monstrous obstacles. And that's what Bond has done in all of his films up to this point. This is the 25th James Bond film. We've never actually seen him die on screen where it matters. He was written off as dead in Skyfall. And I think Connery had there's an example of Connery where he had to like fake his death, but of course he wasn't actually dead. This James Bond is dead, and that is historic that we're actually seeing a 007 get killed off. I want to explain in our next section why it works, because it is very, very singular to Daniel Craig, and I don't really see how James Bond is going to get to a point where they will ever be able to do this again, and I find that to be pretty exciting.
The past isn't dead.
So to wrap all this up, I want to explain why, for me, as an audience member and as someone who loves Daniel Craig's James Bond up to this point, why killing him off works in the context of No Time to Die. For the first time over the course of Daniel Craig's 5 films, they told a connected arc. And it was complicated at times because there were some movies, and I'm pointing at Quantum of Solace and Spectre in particular, that struggled to move the big story of Daniel Craig's James Bond forward. But at no time ever in the previous James Bond films have they told a story that sort of branched through at least 5 different films. There might have been some bleed over where certain characters would go from one film to the next, or especially some villains, Blofeld being one of them, or Jaws during the Roger Moore era. But we've never seen a Bond start at Casino Royale where he's a 00, but he's not 007 yet. It gets to the point at the very end of Casino Royale where it's significant that he introduces himself as...
The name's Bond. James Bond.
And then we watch Craig kind of learn how to be James Bond over the course of this 5-film arc. And so a natural conclusion of this would be this Bond sacrificing himself for the benefit of somebody that he met over the course of this saga and fell deeply in love with. And of course, the way that their paths crossed, especially even bringing in Rami Malek's villain, they're all sort of motivated by the actions of Spectre. So the overall Spectre umbrella that's been hanging over James Bond's 5-film arc to this point with Daniel Craig makes sense. It's relevant. You can only really do it here if you've built up the narrative momentum that carries you through to No Time to Die. And so I actually do think that the death of James Bond in this film is the right closure. It's the right decision. There shouldn't have been an opportunity for Daniel Craig's Bond to continue on. It would have been something that was always sort of hanging over the franchise of could you bring him back? If only because there's a precedent of Connery leaving the role and then coming back and playing him one more time in Never Say Never Again. And because Craig is as beloved as he is in the part, I think a lot of people might actually be calling for him to come back if they hadn't successfully killed him off on screen in No Time to Die. I think it also works because wherever the Bond franchise goes from here, they're going to need to completely reboot. You've heard plenty of rumors about directions that they could go in it, but even in this No Time to Die, they've introduced some really exciting characters. Lashana Lynch playing the new 007, the CIA agent played by Ana de Armas, who could take this mantle and almost spin off. They kind of stole their scenes, and I wouldn't mind sort of moving forward with them. This works specifically for Daniel Craig's James Bond. It's the arc that he's been on since the moment that we first met him in Casino Royale. Bringing his story to closure by actually killing him off made all the sense in the world to me, and it was the emotional payoff that I've been waiting for through the 5 films that Daniel Craig was in.
If we don't do this, there will be nothing left to save.
Needless to say, the ending of No Time to Die is going to be incredibly divisive amongst audience members, many of who probably feel similar to the way that Tom Cruise did about Ethan Hunt, that you just cannot kill off a major character like James Bond. However, there's going to be plenty of people, I think, who do think that this is a fitting conclusion to Daniel Craig's run, so I'm going to want to hear from you in the comments down below to let me know what you think about the ending of No Time to Die. Make sure that you keep it here on CinemaBlend, where we're going to be continuing to debate whether the end of No Time to Die worked or didn't. While you're here, again, I'll remind you to hit subscribe and turn on your notifications. We are doing ending videos like this all the time on CinemaBlend's YouTube page, and I want to make sure that you guys enjoy each and every one of them.